The more failures that I've seen, the struggles and the challenges that have come my way, the more I have become closer to my purpose, closer to what I really want to do in life.
Hi, Muskkan. Thank you for joining me here today. For those that do not know you, could you please tell us a bit more about yourself?
Hi, Manav. Great to be on your show. And thank you for having me on your podcast. You're doing some great work. So continue on, and I look forward to your future podcasts as well. A little bit about myself. I've been living in Hong Kong for the past 13 years. I grew up in Canada. I was born in India. So I've had a bit of a mix of multiple countries in me, which has been great. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a financial planner by the day. I'm a broadcaster by the night. I work for RTHK Radio 3 here in Hong Kong. So it's been a pretty fun journey so far. Mom of two as well. So it keeps me pretty busy.
Wow, well, I cannot wait to dive in and to learning more about your career journey. So, to go back in time, usually I like to ask what were you doing when you were a lot younger, but before then, I would like to actually ask you, since you were a kid, what did you want to be when you were older?
Oh wow, that's a good throwback question to ask. I mean, asking a South Asian kid that's coming from a family that was very traditionally Punjabi. They everything was focused on academics for the most part. Exam results were important. My dad, he was a state topper, so the standards were pretty high in terms of education and focusing on getting the good grades. What I wanted to be was not so much a conversation. The way I understood it growing up was that as long as you're good at school, you'll be good at whatever you do in life. And I'm not sure if that was the greatest advice, but yes, it did work for me at the time because I was very ambitious even growing up. I was an achiever. I was very competitive, so it worked for me having that bit of a pressure with being great at academics.
Okay. And when you went to university, what did you end up pursuing?
So I studied business administration, BBA, and there was something that was really interesting that was introduced that year itself in my university called international business. I'm going back in sort of mid 2000s, and that was a really cool niche to pick up. And being the go getter, get setter, I love traveling, and the international part kind of appealed to me. And I thought, why not sort of delve deeper into that area? So I ended up doing BBA with a major in international business.
That's awesome. And when you graduated from university, what was your first job and what was that experience like?
So my first job was actually my favorite job. And I love talking about my first job because it was not even post university, but it was during university. And I was fortunate enough to be part of a co op program where you get to start to work right as you are going through your initial years, which is a bit better than internship. You pretty much get treated like a full time employee. So you get thrown all kinds of tasks your way. You're actually fulfilling a real role at your job. So my first co-op position was at General Motors, which you may be aware of, one of the biggest car manufacturers at the time. I was working in their regional marketing department in my second year itself, and that was quite an achievement. I was handling a lot of really sort of important tasks, big budgets, executions from branding of cars on newspapers, billboards, and all kinds of really, really cool things that I could have really just dreamt of at that age. And the coolest part of that job was I got to drive a different car every week. I could bring them home and sort of just learn about them, get to know the cars, and then be able to market it. So that was really exciting. And I've driven from the everything from the Corvettes to the Cadillacs to the pickup trucks, which was really really cool at that age.
That's so interesting how you were able to do so much of that at such a young age. And now you telling me that that was actually your favorite job, your first job. What would you say is the difference between a cool job, like you just described, and a dream job for you?
I think they're both very similar. I think it's really important to have a job that has a novelty aspect to it. So something that obviously, you sort of envision when you're in university, you have you know that you're going to show up to a job and it's going to be a certain number of hours and you're going to have to deliver a certain number of tasks and you have to be on top of your game. You must be seen in the right places in front of the right people. So we know all of these things, but what's cool is when you get thrown things that you don't envision and you aren't told. When you're given that kind of responsibilities, when you're sort of treated just as an equal. My manager, gave me things that I was shocked that he was sending my way. And I said, Are you sure you want me to do this? And, he would laugh and he said, Why not? And I think that's cool. To me, a dream job sort of comes together very nicely when it has these cool aspects in it as well that you don't expect for it to come your way. So that's really exciting. In fact, during that job, what I can also say is that I had started something that was never heard of in General Motors at the time, which was Facebook. It was so new at the time that when I spoke about it, I had some very confused and lost faces in the boardroom. And they said, You want General Motors to be on Facebook. And what is that? And that was really, really interesting. I had to write a whole case study to showcase why social media is important, why we would need to be on there eventually. And again, that was really cool as well. Now that we've come, 15, 20 years down the road, we know that every company, has to be on there. So yeah, those are the aspects that I think kind of just, make a job cool and exciting in a way.
It's amazing how technology played such a huge role into your dream role or the cool role you described back then, because now we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we got Snapchat, we got YouTube, we have so many more platforms. Whereas with you back then, you had just Facebook, and that was the only thing that was allowing you to really showcase yourself and your talent really, or just what you would like to offer. Moving forward, so you were in Canada and you enjoyed working in your first role. Did you work in another role, or because you were in Canada first before you moved to Hong Kong? So how did Hong Kong come in the picture and why did you decide to move to Hong Kong?
So I had another role after I finished at General Motors, which was at another mega fashion retail company, being an analyst. So that was a good switch of roles from the creative side of myself to a very analytical side of things, and also a lot of fun as well. But I think once I was in that role, I came to Hong Kong. I was also sort of finishing the international business major that I was talking about, and the role that last year required me to come to a different country to write my final paper. And I chose China as the country because I, again, thought it was so exotic as a North American to think of going to Southeast Asia. And I'd never been to this part of the world. So we chose to come to China. We visited a lot of companies in China. And it was just so, so unique and so different for us to be here. And as an extension of that trip, we came to Hong Kong to explore the city. That was all. We were here for 4 days, and I ended up meeting my husband the first day I was here. And that was it. I was just dating him for a couple of years, and the reason why I moved back to Hong Kong a few years later.
Oh wow. And where did you meet your husband?
In Hong Kong itself.
Oh, in Hong Kong. Wow.
Yes, through some common friends, we got introduced, and it was a friendly exchange at that time that turned into an interest, and then further on from there, we realized, okay, in two different continents, but we want to be together.
Definitely. No, of course. And when you moved to Hong Kong, how did this affect your personal, not your personal, your personal and your professional life actually? Yeah.
I think that's a really good question and something that I don't get asked a whole lot because for a girl, especially a South Asian girl, it's like, hey, you found your dream man. That's important, and that's it. What about the rest? No one really spoke about, especially back then.
Yeah.
When I was getting married, it was a very simple given that I'm going to move to this country and then I'm going to figure my life out, and that's on me. It was a very sort of taken in a light situation, the whole career aspect of mine, which for me was huge. Sort of giving up everything that I worked towards, my dream jobs that I loved working in, and sort of starting from scratch in a country where I don't know what my future will be, if I will have a future with work. And that was something that was sort of a deep down fear. I don't think I expressed it at the age of 24 when I got married. That was too early for a young girl to have known what all of this would entail. Obviously, my married life was an important part of an adjustment for me, and I wanted to focus on that initially. But I missed work, and I missed being sort of at the level that I was in Canada at the time, at that early age, and had to rebuild that from scratch in Hong Kong.
So using all of this that you talked about, where I can tell it's definitely it's one of those cultural shocks, I guess, moments. And so dealing with that, how did you use that as a way to sort of go forward with your career in terms of, okay, how did you start then doing what you wanted to do in Hong Kong?
I think that it takes a lot of inner self reflection. And I learned the art of that over time, being sort of acutely tuned into sort of what your deepest desires are. Because once you're thrown into a very unknown, sort of fathomable experience or situation, what really helps is to know deeply what you care about and what will really make a difference in your life. If I just picked up another job that I, maybe was not so passionate about, it would have reflected in my personal life with this new family, with my sort of new relationships around, and that would not be great. So it was really important for me to know that I want to work towards something that I would love. And that answer took a while to come. So when I initially moved to Hong Kong, I started off as an entrepreneur. My sister-in-law and myself, we started an events company, which was also pretty adventurous. We sort of went out of the box with the idea of what we wanted to do in the event space. And that was really exciting as well. We brought international authors to Hong Kong, authors like Stephen Covey, which was unheard of. And again, us young girls sort of taking on such, lofty projects at that time was quite unconventional, and that was enjoyable as well. But as an entrepreneur, we sort of know that we need to evolve, we need to understand the needs of the market, you need to be able to adapt to change and be okay with things not working your way. And we soon understood that Hong Kong was a different market. It's not like America where you can fill sort of halls and stadiums with people when you bring such kind of names down. And that was a learning, and that was completely fine as well. I think it was a beautiful experience that we both took so much from, that contributed to where we are today in so many ways. So that was a great start to our journey. And from there on, we went on to our own ways, doing several different other things. I dabbled in the tech world. I dabbled into the edutech. My husband's businesses, which were in the F&B sector. So we had our own restaurants and bars in the most known partying area of Hong Kong, which is Lang Kwai Fong. So yeah, I have really thrown myself in many ventures, many projects. If I went on to list them, like, we would not get through the night. But I think the important thing for me in Hong Kong was, as long as I'm doing something that contributes to me and I contribute to it basically serves the purpose for me. I have to grow from it. It has to excite the living life out of me, and I have to contribute towards a larger purpose with it, and that's super important for me.
I like how you dip your toe into different ponds and the fact that you being able to try out different things into realizing what exactly did I want to do. In the end, was there something that you, from testing out working within food and beverage, within tech, within events, was there a particular industry that stood out to you?
I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of understand that you can't attach yourself to anything in particular. The times are changing so fast that you sort of realize that things change. And I think post COVID, we've understood that more than ever before, that the market is ever evolving, and people are ever evolving. The dynamics of the markets are ever evolving. So I can't say there was one particular industry that stood out more, but I did actually enjoy edutech a lot. I think there's a great future, for where that's headed, and there's so much to be tapped into in that space as well. And simultaneously, I started dabbling into the finance world as well, and there's so much there that I've enjoyed, as well. So I think you have to be, again, very tuned into where are things headed, what kind of world are we living in today, what are people needing, where are the gaps, and what can I now offer, knowing all of that. As an entrepreneur, you just have to be switched on, completely switched on to opportunities, and jump into it when they're available to you. Don't wait, don't think, whether this is the right time, whether I'm ready for it, because like I said, markets change so quick, And the next thing there is, it's already saturated, or there are other players in the market that are doing, a great job.
What is one thing you wish you learned before becoming an entrepreneur?
Oh dear. I think a few things. First and foremost is sort of knowing that tragedy is the nature's greatest purifier. So having things like COVID, when they hit you and when they sort of jolt you, it's sort of a start of something new. And I think I learned that again through the experiences of what happened during COVID, what happened in Hong Kong especially. And I think that was a huge learning, is to be able to understand that that situation is definitely going to bring out something that you never knew existed. And that definitely has to do with where I am today, with a lot of the things that I am doing today. And also, I think the other important thing is that, and this is a little bit more sort of on the personal side as well, is that life's, way too valuable to hang with people that don't get you. So sometimes, you feel like you haven't really understood the dynamics of the people that you're working with or you're surrounded with, but sometimes they're really stopping you knowingly or unknowingly from where you want to be. Sometimes they're well-meaning people, but you really have to know that you're around the right crowd that's really going to nurture you, going to sort of add to that fire within you to get to the places that you need to get. Otherwise it's going to slow you down. And I think that was again a learning through my entrepreneurial journey, which was super important. And now I try to be more sort of well aware of it.
I totally understand and totally get you what you mean by that, because I think knowing who you surround yourself with it's a huge factor in terms of growth and also where you want to be. And if you're not surrounding yourself with the right sort of people, how can you do it? And it's also difficult because it's like you're surrounding yourself with people, but there are some times and some moments you realize, oh, this person, I know, as much as I love them, I need to kind of distance myself from them a bit, or just like find a way to really just do what I need to do first. And then, because at the end of the day, it's what we want to do and what makes us happy. And if that's what we desire, sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, because our dreams can sometimes be a little scary even for us. Sometimes they're just so big, yet they're just so important deep within you're meant to be doing that.
Yeah,
And if it's scary to you, imagine saying it to people who absolutely have no clue of what you're capable of and what they would react to it as. And I've learned that over time is that I sort of manage my excitement around my dreams, and I try to
mm,
make sense of it in my head first. I try to, sort of rationalize it, or sometimes even just sort of have a bit more sense around it through just writing it down on paper, as opposed to talking too much about it to people around me, because then it sort of gets influenced and sometimes a bit diluted in my motivation to want to do it, and you sort of don't want that all the time.
totally. 100%. Now, using what we talked about and moving on. So you went into entrepreneurship. Now, you mentioned earlier that you also do broadcasting by night. So could you please tell us a bit more about when did this interest in broadcasting, how did it begin with, and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, broadcasting, it happened very naturally and organically. In fact, it started off as a casual conversation with my singing guru a couple of years ago. And, we started talking about the lack of South Asian representation in media, especially in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia. And, just the idea of keeping our culture and heritage alive as South Asians outside of South Asia. And, he's an encyclopedia of South Asian music. So we would often chat about music, musicians for hours. And I think, and we would think that it would be so great to bring this content to the world. So, and I'm talking about a couple of years ago, where podcasting wasn't the rage that it is today. So we instantly went to the idea of radio. It'd be great to be, having a radio station or some kind of a web streaming, an app that would sort of bring this kind of content out to the world. So our, entrepreneurial minds started going off. We started getting excited about the idea. And that gave birth to Network South Asia, which is, what we air today. We have co-founders, in fact, in that organization, which is Jayang and Sadia. And we have a nonprofit that is registered in the UK by the name of Network South Asia. So it started off as an idea on our, in our living rooms, but then it went on to getting so much traction that RTHK came to us and said, why don't you air this on our main English channel called Radio 3 during prime time. So on Sunday nights now, every week we air our show, Network South Asia, on their radio channel.
That's awesome. And are you still doing it today?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, wow. I'm trying to bring everything together in terms of what we discussed and trying to understand now. How do you deal with failure?
Dealing with failure is a journey. I think every time you fail, you have a sense of who you are that comes with it. I think it's people think of it as, it definitely is a huge drop in ego every time you fail. But because it's a drop in ego, it also helps to elevate a part of you that was waiting and itching to come out and show itself and reveal itself. So, I know people talk about it a lot that, failure is great. You learn from your failures. Yes, absolutely. But on a very deeper level, what's happening with failures is it's letting you evaluate yourself, your emotions on a very deeper level. And that to me has been a journey. The more failures that I've seen, the struggles and the challenges that have come my way, the more I have become closer to my purpose, closer to what I really want to do in life. And and I think every time that happens, I come closer to the kind of work that I want to do. And honestly, I a lot of the times I'm not even thinking about the work itself. I'm just getting closer to the idea of what I want to work towards, and it comes to me. And I think that tuning in to that deeper self of yours itself opens up so much. And that's been a real constant in my life. Every time I've had a door shut, I've had several doors open that I had no idea were bringing me closer to myself in so many ways. So yeah, I'm a believer of failure, if you can say that.
Yeah, it's almost like saying that it's not rejection, it's redirection. And the fact that I find failure very liberating. And one thing I've learned actually very recently is patience. I'd say
Oh
patient is
yeah.
a very, very tough skill for me or for a lot of people. I'd say it's just to and I actually covered it in one of my recent podcast episodes of how it's a useful quality, but it really is. And something I dealt with very recently was short-term frustration, always waiting for the result. And it's almost like me just waiting. I'm like, when can I get this desired outcome that I'm craving for? I try to accept the failure that comes with it, even though I might not get the result or what I want, as long as I learn from the journey and I can apply to something better, because I do believe that something better just come ahead.
This is when, the people you surround yourself with becomes so important, because failure is sort of unavoidable. It's going to happen at some point in our lives. We are going to go through it. But the people that we surround ourselves with help to keep us sort of, up and going. Sometimes being lonely in those situations can be very tough, or being in the wrong company in those situations can be very tough, because you don't know how to pick yourself up, and you feel even worse because you see maybe very successful people who are only showing you the successful part of their lives. And then you're thinking, okay, well, I clearly am a loser. So I think it's important to have that right company around you that just picks you up in the right ways, just enough to get you back on track to getting going with your tasks and your goals, that everything can be okay, and we have another shot that we can give tomorrow, and just reset, start tomorrow fresh like nothing ever happened, and that you have a real shot at life again. And to me, that really just defines how we sort of progress through our journeys in life and in our careers as well.
And the most important thing is that you're not alone at all.
Yes.
I think that's
Yes,
the most important
absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. I think the social media world has sort of, that's one positive that I personally feel. And the reason why I still love social media is because I really go there, to provide value and to sort of learn and grow from it too. So I'm always looking for the community, that supports you when you sort of feel low. You can go out there and share with people, you can express yourself. So I feel there's so many sort of positives to the platform that people don't look at. It gets spoken down upon so much. And that was not why social media ever began. It began really to cultivate that sort of community feel. And I still stick to that. I still go there for that. I go there to share something that really excites me, that I feel will inspire people, and I hope that it inspires people. And I go there to learn from the others that, are doing the hard work, are going out there and, sort of hustling, and the mothers that are showing up, even though it's hard with the amount of things they have on their plate. So to me, that's what it's there for. So no, you're not alone. There is a whole world out there to learn from.
Exactly. And I want to actually pick up something you mentioned because you are a working mother. And I want to delve deep into that in terms of how does that affect the choices you make now. And since becoming a work mom, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned?
Um, I think being a mother has made me way more stronger mentally than I ever was. I think it's sort of, again, touched and nudged parts of me that I didn't know existed. So it's, these little beings that have been my biggest teachers in so many ways. And I think the working mom aspect becomes so much more important. And I'm going back to the idea of knowing deeply what's important to you and doing the work that really speaks to you, and making sure that you make it count, because every second I feel that I'm away from my child is a cost. It's sort of that opportunity cost that's involved, and if I'm away from them, it has to make sense. It has to be something that I love so deeply that I'm okay to give up that time with them, and that when I come back, I have so much to share. So I've had a lot of sort of a lot of retrospection in this area of, how much should I work, how many hours should I be away from them, am I not spending enough time with them. It's such a normal sort of feeling for a mother, especially of young children. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're constantly wanting my time. And what I've come to realize is that what they really love is to see what their mother is up to. What they really love is to know my world. As much as I'm a part of it, they want to be a part of it. And so when I come home from work, it's just, it's as simple as me sharing my entire day with them, and sharing, some of the most sort of complicated discussions with them. Sometimes it may not make any sense to them, but I share it with them anyways, and I tell them that this is what I went through, this is what I loved about my day, this is what I did today, and then there will be probably some feedbacks or some laughs or some this they run away. They have no idea what I'm talking about, but it makes them feel like this work is important to mama, and that he cares to share about it with us. And so it doesn't feel like I'm just running away from them or I'm not spending time with them, because that's not the point. And I think that's been a great sort of learning over time, to make sense of motherhood and work together.
Okay. Now I'm going to lead this next question in terms of everything you discussed because it all seems very glamorous as you're describing it. But how do you deal with burnout? And also, because you mentioned at the start again, you're working day and night. How do you have times to do that along with, spending time with your kids?
Burnout is a real thing. It's definitely something that moms go through all the time. Moms of young kids. I think burnout is just natural. It becomes normal. As much as horrible as that sounds, it's sort of part of our lives, and I think we just learn to be okay with it. And I mean, this sort of, it has nothing to do with the fact that, we have great partners, who really contribute in so many ways. I'm so grateful to my husband, who supports me, when I'm taking on a gazillion projects at one go, and he has no idea how I'm going to do it. But the end, sort of the point of the whole thing is that a mother is a mother, and especially being in the South Asian community, end of the day, you are going to have to take on more than the father will. Even for tonight, for example, I'm, on this podcast, my kids are home, my husband was at work. He didn't sacrifice on his work time because I had to be somewhere to do something. And I can't expect him to do that because his work somehow is more important. And so his work hours are not something that I can, sort of ask to compromise on. If he has to be out until late, he has to be out until late. I am the one who has to work around it. And it's sort
Yeah.
of just a given. It's sort of a norm, the societal norm, which we're playing with. I think our generation is definitely challenging it in so many ways. And like I said, I'm so grateful. He does more than I expect him to do, but at the same time, it's not equal. And I think that is, that part of it is not glamorous. There are burnouts. There are points where I feel like I'm so lonely in this journey. Having to go after my dreams and then still make sure, my kids have the gazillion things they need, through their day, through their school, for their nutrition, for their discipline, for their routine. It's all sort of so important. So I think there's that aspect of the burnout, but then there is also the aspect where you are sort of accountable for your own mental health, and I take that very seriously as well. I personally feel, not just for myself but for the moms around me, my own friends, I personally like to be able to, sort of share the fact that take care of your mental health. If you are tired, there's nothing more important in this world than your rest. Your kids can wait, your husband can wait, your work can wait. And when people don't take that seriously, I sort of try and give them the real picture of it. It's not going to look really good if you sort of ignore this. And I again, I apply that on myself equally as well. And when I need that rest and I absolutely need to shut down, I just let everyone know, sorry, I'm going to have to shut down. And so come on and take over, and sort of help me out here. And that's just the reality of it.
Preach. Yeah. No, that's very believable and very convincing and very valid as well. We just have a few questions left. I think now I want to focus on more about the present. So could you please tell us more about your role in financial planning and also what are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, I'm dabbling, the financial planning world at the moment, which has been really interesting. And of course, broadcasting has been, a part of me that has helped me and allowed me to express creatively. But what happened during COVID is that, obviously the world went through a lot, but Hong Kong especially shut down, for a long time, and businesses were massively affected. We had to shut down our own businesses. There were job losses. There was a lot of sort of stress that was going on, not only in the city but in our own family as well. And during those times, I realized that I knew very less about financial planning, about my own personal finances, about managing them well for tough times, for rainy days. We all do the bare minimum that's required in terms of investing. We have our stocks, we have our properties, we have our, gold and whatnot that we invest in, and we think that's enough. But during COVID, I realized I wasn't looking beyond, I wasn't thinking beyond, and I wasn't preparing for what was to come, in times like COVID. And that was a deep learning experience. And I was sort of fortunate because my family business back home in Canada was into financial management. So I've seen my dad do this, sort of growing up, and I always thought it was so boring. I thought, he was just juggling with numbers. If this was just something that he did for a living to earn money. But I think during COVID is when it dawned on me that his work was so important, that I wish I learned enough during those years that I would have done my own sort of preparation for times like these. As wives, we think that we're there to support, but we're never ready to actually be in the leading seat. Like we're not there in the driving seat,
Yeah.
and we don't envision ourselves being there. And so when that happened for a little while in our family, I was sort of shocked, and I said, everyone's like looking at me, and I'm like, okay, no, I haven't planned for this. So I think that's when this became a real conversation with my own father, and he advised me to go and learn this officially, get licensed, and start to take on this career. Which then I started to understand how impactful and how important it is, especially for women today who are, you know, they're earning well. They're go getters. They're in big management positions. They are earning well, but they don't know what to do with their money. And that's when it started to sort of come to me that this is a great space to learn from for myself, and also to again add value to educate others as well. And it's since been a very rewarding journey. I've also been licensed in Hong Kong to practice this, and been doing this under the AIA banner.
It's really inspiring and I'm so happy for you
Thank you.
and look forward to hearing what you are going to be doing next. But in contrast now, so clearly you're doing well and you're doing a lot right now after everything we've discussed in this episode. Now, to end off this podcast, I would like to take your mind back to where we started. Not the childhood bit, but more about where were you at age, let's say, and in university, whether you were like 18, 19 years old. Or like, what would you say to the person who you are now? So think as if you were 18 in terms of the advice you would give to them.
I think what I would say is that there was a lot that the young 18-year-old me would sort of um, there was a lot of outside noise that I'd let inside. There was a lot of, opinions and influences in my life, whether that's family or friends or, sort of extended communities, that would sort of have a very strong hold of how I would lead my life. If I had to go back and see myself then, I think I realized that the tragedy of life is not death, but it's actually what we let die inside of us when we live. And and that learning came over time. There was a lot that 18-year-old probably wanted to do, but I let it go, and I thought, I'm a girl, I'm a South Asian. I don't need to prove myself, I don't need to be out there and be in those tough situations. But it sort of slowly was killing me inside, because there was so much I wanted to do. And I think I'm glad that sort of dawned on me a lot earlier than later. And that's thanks to my husband, who's really been such a great mirror, in terms of just understanding who I am and what I want to do. He's given me so much space to be able to explore myself, which if I hadn't had that space, I think that I would still be living that 18-year-old girl life and not knowing that there's so much in me that's just waiting to come out. And there's so much that is waiting to contribute to people, just wanting to be, a piece of something. I don't want to be the drop, I want to be the ocean. And to do that, you have to put that in perspective of what your life is worth. What is it that you're here to do? And I know I'm talking on a very macro level, and it may sound a bit airy fairy, but that's what life is about. It's really understanding that at any given point you are important, and your dreams are important. What you think deeply is important. It doesn't matter whether you're an 18-year-old, a 12-year-old, or a 40-year-old. If it's something that speaks to you, do it, and it's never too late for that.
Thank you very much, Muskan, for joining us and for doing this with me. For people that would like to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
My Instagram, so it's Muskkan Samtani, Muskkan Samtani, or even on LinkedIn would be Muskkan Samtani as well. I'd love to connect and I'd love to interact.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And for those that are watching, make sure to like, subscribe, and give this video a thumbs up. Stay tuned for a new guest and video coming very soon. Thank you, Muskan, for joining us here today, and speak to you guys soon.
All the best to you, Manav. Thank you so much.
Thank you.